before the podcast could even begin. It turned into a fumbling war.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Culture Compass. I'll do this one again. Okay?
The signs of a broken team are quite recognizable once you have. Oh, sorry.
Next 7.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Culture Compass, a podcast where we talk about all things HR. Okay, sorry. Once again.
Take 32.
The signs of a broken team are quite
Take 57.
more often than you may think.
No, you're going great.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Is it my face?
No. This is me. This is this.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Culture Compass, a podcast where we are meant to talk about things. Okay, do this one. See, I'm equally bad.
Good. This gives me confidence. Thank you. You have no idea. My stress levels have come down.
Perfect. Objective.
Yeah.
Who will win the battle of fumbles? Watch the podcast to find out.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Culture Compass, your go-to podcast for insights around everything HR. I'm your host Abhishek Haval, and today we are going to talk about one of the most critical aspects of business: how to work with broken teams. What are some of the ways in which you can mend purely from a perspective of you either being a manager or someone who's actually driving HR? Dysfunctional teams can often lead to loss in morale, change the way our culture is being built, and in fact is like a negative ripple effect, can actually break or make your culture. How do you do this? And for us to unreveal and see what exactly is the magic that we can create, we have with us our guest, Mr. Pradeep Bangalore. And we'll learn from him some of the aspects that would actually help us fix these broken teams. Welcome to our podcast, Pradeep.
Thanks, Abhishek. Thanks for having me, and really excited to have this real challenge conversation with you today.
So Pradeep, let's start by laying some groundwork, okay? So when you enter an organization and you end up looking at a broken team, what are some of the things that you typically look for?
The signs of a broken team are quite recognizable once you have seen them a few times, and it happens more often than you can think.
Okay.
The early sign or the first sign that's almost very easy to detect is an erosion of trust. People stop being honest or vulnerable, and that is when collaboration becomes surface level.
Okay.
Then you notice alignment breakdown, confusion with respect to roles, who is expected to do what, and the problems that arise with it. Energy drainer is a big indicator. Low morale, no motivation, lack of enthusiasm, doing the work for the sake of doing it is a big indicator in terms of a broken team. And finally, turf wars start to take over. Rather than taking collective responsibilities, finger pointing starts. People start retreating into working into silos. They get very territorial about their work. And the focus is more on blaming each other for the issues or the problems that arise rather than solving them together. What's interesting is I have seen this play across many settings globally, right? It could be an R&D team or it could be a leadership team. The pattern is universal.
So I absolutely agree with you on that, Pradeep. A lot of times when a lot of issues are not being addressed, that actually starts building like a snowball effect. You end up hearing the same things again and again. And that's not really, does not sit well with anyone. In fact, there is something called as a CO disease, which is basically the moment people start going up the ranks, the lesser problems, the candid issues that people actually have on ground, you end up missing them because of the kind of conversations you're earlier privy to Now you don't, because of the hierarchy that you're in now, right? Now, especially for leaders or especially for managers at large, if I were to look at rebuilding trust, because I believe at the base of it, the first point that you ended up mentioning is the erosion of trust. And if organizations want to start reinstilling that, what do you think are some of the steps we should take?
Okay. Um, First, it's a myth that trust cannot be rebuilt. There is an old saying that goes, once a mirror is broken, you cannot fix it. But I think otherwise, when it comes to trust, it is difficult, yes, but it can be rebuilt. What underlines is the real intention. You mentioned about the CO disease, which is interesting because I'll give you an example. What happened recently, right? One of our global leaders who is perceived as very tough or very not approachable, once in a very in an all hands, he just made a very simple comment to one of the questions that was asked, saying, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have listened more. I'm sorry, I should have listened more than what I have." And that simple statement had the power of his team members going up to him with honest feedback, being very candid about it, and regaining that trust. So, what he did with that simple statement was one, provide that psychological safety, as we call it, right? Creating a safe space for his team members to be open about and candid about what they want to share without any negative repercussions or fear of repercussions. One. And second, he took the issue head on rather than brushing up, which was very easy, right? To brush up with the corporate jargons that most of us are used to at some time and derailing the entire question. He just made a very simple commitment by saying, I should have listened to you more often than I have. And I will. That's a commitment that he made. And I think that very sentence build or bridge that gap to begin with. And I think that's a powerful example of how a trust can be rebuilt.
Now, that's really interesting, Pradeep. Now, especially in organizations where there is extreme high pressure situation, a lot of times the fear that even leaders have, how can I let my guard down and actually show that I'm also vulnerable, I'm also human, right at the end of the day? So, how do you get them to model trust?
That's a very interesting question, Abhishek. In my opinion, vulnerability does not make you weak. It makes you more relatable. And as you pointed out, more human. And I would actually argue that you cannot afford not to. And I have so many examples of leaders win back their credibility, including myself, right? When they have admitted to the team or to their people saying that they don't have answers to all the questions,
Absolutely.
right? Um, and how do they? But what is more important is that this openness is combined with actions. And one way to do this is to engineer small wins. Have a small team collaborate more for a particular outcome or a project. Celebrate those small wins and build smaller, more achievable milestones. What it does is it helps you to build confidence plank by plank, a little more slowly, but steadily nonetheless.
So, Pradeep, one thing that you mentioned, and again, that is a very powerful thing, which is celebrating small wins. But also, there is one more thing that organizations can do, which is celebrating failures. Because that talks a lot about the organization, the leaders. How open are you in terms of even talking about the failures you have had in managers? And that also builds a great culture where people are um, actually talked about or told it's okay to make new mistakes. That also leads me to another question. So now, while we are building trust, right, one of the most important things is how do you align teams? How do you make sure that when you're building a team and we are aligning them, how is everybody rowing towards the same goal? And how are we making sure as leaders that what they're chasing after is something everybody is also chasing after and not everybody is going in different directions?
Okay. Once the trust starts coming back, the next frontier that one should address is alignment. I call it resetting of the compass, right? What is the purpose? What is the goal? Why are we doing it? What were the past failures, as you said? What did we learn from it? Who's accountable for what? Who's responsible for what? How do we support each other so that more failures or more mistakes don't happen?
Yep.
This is what we call it as co-owning goals. In many projects that I have worked with, I have seen teams come alive when they're responsible for a shared outcome. They not only receive it, but they are also the part of designing it and providing solutions for the same. And one of the ways to keep it alive is to provide it with constructive feedback loops, right? Are we on track? Is there a need to course correct? Because alignment is not a one time thing,
Yep.
it is a continuous, consistent exercise.
So totally, Pradeep, alignment is not something that is a one-time thing and it's a continuous process. In fact, there's also one concept that I recently heard of, which is the last 8%. A lot of times when people start sharing information with you, when you ask them questions of where exactly is a problem, what are some of the things you need to build or problems that you are to solve in order to build that alignment, people end up sharing information only about 92% because the other 8% is where the real problem lies, and that's where you see a lot of hesitancy.
Correct.
And you need to have that data, you need to have all information for you to actually align team members. Now, in order to keep this process ongoing and to keep it on track, what are some of the recommendations you would like to give to people?
Um, Abhishek, one of the ways that I would recommend anybody, managers, leaders, or what I also do is to keep providing clarity in every meetings, one-to-ones, and any group discussions. And also involve your team members with respect to why a certain decision was made, how was the decision made, and what was the context for that decision. The second one is recognition, right? I feel that it just amps up the morale and the energy levels of your team members when they see that their efforts are noticed.
Absolutely. So you also believe in looking at any problem as a 1-3-1 solution, like one problem, three solutions, one gets shortlisted.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very interesting way to put it, right? So whenever your team comes to you with a problem, you always say, if you were me, what would you like to do?
Yep.
Or what would you do? Or how would you approach it? When you share this ownership between your team member and yourself, there is more engagement in
Absolutely.
the outcomes that come out of this. So I think that's very interesting.
Absolutely. So this is something that we also follow internally as a team, where it's absolutely okay if you don't have a solution to a problem, right? It might be the first time you're solving the problem.
Yeah.
But as a policy, what we request people is, doesn't matter if it's any problem, right? You come to me with at least solutions. Not necessarily you will have the right solution, but come to me with 3 solutions,
Correct.
whatever it is. We'll shortlist one out of it and
Correct.
we'll build on it.
Correct.
So this is something that we
Three,
coined it
okay.
internally, 1-3-1.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. I think I should be asking questions and you should be answering. Okay. So what was your question?
It wasn't a question. In fact, we were actually trying to understand, is that the kind of model that would also be implemented? So every time, in fact, already answered it.
Yeah.
So whenever any person is coming to you with a challenge, you put them in a situation where you start thinking versus they're looking at you as someone who will offer you solutions.
Okay, great. To give you an example, very recently in our organization, we launched a mentorship program.
Okay.
And I've had so many mentors and mentees come up to us and say that they feel re-energized with a great conversation that they have had with either their mentees or their mentors, and they are looking forward for such conversations because it repurposes their goal and their engagement, and of course in the context that they are looking at. Another powerful tool that we could look at is reframing on how do you handle challenges from, say, focusing on what's broken to what is the possibility and how we move forward from here. And finally, connection rituals do matter. What do I mean by these connection rituals is your monthly offsites or your team lunches or your team building activities, and even your Rangoli competitions. More often than not, we HR are blamed only for doing these Rangoli competitions. But if you actually see the amount of collaboration, the amount of informal bonding that happens due to these events, create a sense of energy and belonging.
You just picked a very pertinent point, which is engagement, because at the end of the day, um, if people are not engaged in the way they drive things, the possibility of one them enjoying what they're doing and to the outcomes is definitely going to impact. So once you build trust, once you realign them, one of the biggest things that you have to do, most critical aspects, is how do you keep them energized at all points of time. What's your approach to bringing back that spark within the team when they're approaching a certain problem?
Okay. Yes, I remember a cross-functional team which had to work together due to a reorg, and the leaders of both these teams were brilliant technocrats and brilliant at what they do. And they were at loggerheads, if I can say, with each other's approach or ideas. And that kind of created a lot of frustration for the team under, and a lot of confusion. Um, so we had to intervene, right, and talk to them as to what is happening and what we can do to help them. One of the very interesting things that came out due to this very simple exercise of just asking them is they were not even aware that that there was a visible tension that was going on between them, and this could be seen by the team, and it was affecting their productivity. Right. So more often than not, rather than having larger schemes, larger interventions, it starts with the most basic, right? It starts with something called as mirroring exercise, to have a dialogue, to enable them with an understanding and building that awareness. And I think once that acknowledgement creeps in, the solution is just a byproduct.
So I absolutely agree with what you shared. And in fact, every small thing that a person does needs to be appreciated is something that we speak of. But at the other spectrum, a lot of managers also have this question, okay, why should I appreciate someone for the salary that they're getting? So where do you draw that line? How do you get people to actually spread or share a message, or actually build a culture where even smaller things are being appreciated about? Because that is also very important for teams to be energized or be engaged in whatever they do.
There are many tried and tested assessments, team diagnostics, and of course, there are multiple ways to kind of do it, depending on the kind of problem that you as a team is facing, and in what stage the team is. I mean, is it a new team? Is it a mature team? Is it a two teams coming together due to a reorg, etc.? So a simple team assessment would be a great diagnostic, because they would surface the blind spots which the team or their leaders wouldn't know. A facilitated dialogue is one of the most underrated yet powerful tool that could assess in helping people build those awareness and then bring in those solutions. Of course, coaching, mentoring, not only at the individual level but also at a group level,
Got it.
is a great tool to help such interventions. And lastly, it's also to do with system thinking, right? The problem sometimes is not just within the teams or between teams. It has a larger context, a larger organizational context that could create a dysfunctional team. And answering that organizational context in relation to creating symbiosis within the team is also very important. And that is where system thinking plays a huge role.
So Pradeep, you mentioned system thinking, right? That is one of the key aspects if you were to drive, may that be about energizing team, driving the kind of collaboration that you're expecting the teams to have. But For our understanding, what exactly is system thinking? If you can give an example.
What I can think of is a very classical example, right? Most of the organizations reward individual outcomes, behaviors, rather than collaboration, right? So, this is how a certain dysfunction can creep into a team. The organization needs to fix both. So, this is how a system thinking would reward not only your individual contribution, but also how you collaborate as a team member.
So now, since you mentioned intervention, and because a lot of our listeners are from the HR and of course will be managers, we'd also love to understand from you, given the fact that you have been in this role for quite a long time, an organizational development perspective, are there certain key takeaways uh, that our people can actually implement when they're intervening with teams?
Advice to all the new managers, leaders is don't fall into the trap of thinking that you should have answers to all the problems or issues. Your role is to build clarity and trust, not be the smartest person in the room. It's okay to admit that you don't know everything. That vulnerability, as we talked about earlier, builds credibility. I would rather advise them to invest their time in knowing their people
Okay.
and be consistent about it. By consistent, I mean being consistent in providing clarity, being consistent in communication, and building a culture where feedback can flow both ways. And developing these leadership behaviors is like building muscles. You get better with practice, reflection, and surrounding yourself with mentors. So, to sum it up, being consistent and more importantly, being a human will make you one of the best leaders, managers, or a team member that you can ever be.
You're absolutely right, Pradeep. A lot of times managers do feel the pressure that they need to have all the answers. It's absolutely fine if they just admit that I don't have this answer, but I'll figure it out and come back to you. That also creates a space where they also end up looking at you as a human versus a manager, and that's where the magic lies. On that note, we are coming towards the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Pradeep, for being here, sharing those amazing insights with respect to how do you actually build um, teams that are broken today. And all of that starts with understanding and building trust within teams, realigning them, and keeping them energized so that you keep pivoting towards the right goals for the organization. More importantly, it's not just the process, but it's about how do you keep listening into the teams so that you take the right intentional decisions and then pivot in the way you would want to. Thank you so much once again for being here.
Thanks again, Abhishek. Pleasure was all mine, and it was great having this conversation with you today.
Awesome. To all our listeners, whether you are an HR professional, a manager, or a team member, just remember that don't give up on your teams so easily. There's always a way in which you can bounce back, and we just heard from Pradeep. There's a structured way, a process, and a way in which you can actually make sure teams can bounce back and start delivering. To all the first time managers, make sure that you take enough support, you lean in, you constantly learn and evolve, and therefore build successful teams. This is Abhishek Haval signing off from Culture Compass. Just make sure you're always curious, always creative, and build cultures that are worth talking about. Thank you so much.